Seeing people here when we explain the interconnected nature of the systems, I love seeing that light in their eye when they're like, wow, someone understands. Wow, someone's looking at me as a person, not just a liver, not just an intestine. It's all together, it's all working together.
Welcome to the Healing Reset Podcast. It's a place where we aim to provide hope and true healing from chronic suffering by talking to experts on how to treat your whole body system, not just your symptoms. You guys, contrary to modern day belief, your body is designed to heal and also just designed to be well. I'm Jess, your host. If you happen to have chronic pain or ever wondered if acupuncture can help you, now's a good time to tune in and listen up. Today, we have on Jesse Ozimek. She has her doctorate in Chinese medicine and is currently in pursuit of her certification from the Institute of Functional Medicine. Thanks for being here, Jesse.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So I've never heard about the doctorate in Chinese medicine. What was the defining moment that just launched you into pursuing that degree?
Well, like most of us in the pandemic who had a little extra time on our hands, I actually took just kind of at the start of the pandemic, I was starting a new job and I knew that might come with a little extra time. And then the pandemic hit and I was like, okay, I'm jumping in. So I took the last 2 years and kind of devoted it to that project and walked out with a doctorate.
So were you doing acupuncture prior? Is that something where you establish yourself and then you further your education?
So in Chinese medicine, the standard is you go to a program that's anywhere between 4 and 5 years, and you get a bachelor's degree and a master's in traditional Chinese medicine. That prepares you to sit for 4 national board exams. Once you pass those, you can apply for licensure in your state and you can practice acupuncture as a licensed acupuncturist. So those extra nerdy of us out there can go a little bit further. And the doctorate is the terminal degree in the field at this time.
So what I hear you saying, I know listeners are going to be like, but this is needles being put into my body. And I hear you saying that it's not just something that you watch a YouTube video on. You've done your research. You know how the body works.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So there's like 3,000 hours of clinical and didactic experience involved in the training. So, yeah. So there's like desk learning, book learning, and then you have clinical hours, kind of similar to Western medicine school.
Yeah. Well, let's start from the very basics. What is acupuncture?
Okay. So, first thing that we need to distinguish is that acupuncture is one modality underneath the umbrella of traditional Chinese medicine. So, traditional Chinese medicine encompasses acupuncture, herbal medicine, and then there's different modalities like cupping, massage, gua sha, which is kind of like a scraping technique. So, traditional Chinese medicine is the umbrella, and acupuncture is one subset of it. But acupuncture specifically, it's a system of medical treatment and there's an ideology behind it. But basically the principle is applying small needles to specific points in the body to affect change. And in our world, we talk about that health is not only like the absence of disease, but it's the harmonious functioning of all of your systems together. So if we had to describe like basically what is Chinese medicine, what's this theory, you could take it back. We'll do like a little Chinese medicine 101. So,
yes,
in our world, we have 12 main internal organs, and each organ has a channel that runs throughout the body. So, for those of you who have not heard of channels or meridians, you can kind of think of it like in Western medicine, they don't think your blood is just flowing randomly around your body. There's like an organized network of blood vessels that carry it around the body where it needs to go, back up to the heart, to the lungs, blah, blah, blah. In Chinese medicine, we think each organ has an energy, and that energy is carried around the body in an organized way. And really, they are vessels, but we say channels or meridians carry this energy around the body. And each channel has points on it. So these are the acupuncture points. So depending on what you want to work on, depending on the imbalance that the patient presents with, you choose different points. You stimulate them with different techniques, and that's how we affect change or communicate with the body. To take it like a step further, like a simple way to talk about the basics of how we discuss disease, if you think about these channels, we want the energy flowing smoothly through the channels, okay? Because the channels are, in fact, thought of as part of the organ. And the smooth flow of energy in the channel means that the organ's working properly. If we have stuck energy in a channel, that's what we call stagnation. And that stagnation is where a lot of problems start. So if you picture like walking in nature and you see a stagnant pond, it's like the water's not moving, all this kind of like gunk builds up. It's kind of gross, right? That's exactly what happens in our channels when we have stagnation. And we say that that stuck energy or stagnation is like an invitation for toxins, inflammatory agents, different things to build up, which over time gets things more stuck. And then down the road, we develop like problems, whether it's inflammation, pain, different diseases, different internal imbalances.
I was just going to ask, like, how does that express out? And so that's how it expresses once you get this stuck energy, toxin buildup, it can express in all different varieties of chronic pain or diseases.
Yes, absolutely. So pain is one common thing that we treat, but we also see a lot of different internal medicine related concerns. But it really depends on which organ it's stuck in, right? So if you have, or where there's an imbalance, and we should say, so if you have a kidney system imbalance, it can come with this list of symptoms. If you have stomach and spleen system imbalance, it can come with digestion and different mental emotional spaces and different things associated. So wherever the stagnation is occurring or wherever an imbalance occurs is where we will see corresponding pathology.
Is it fair to say that someone who's seeking out Western medicine for a condition also could be seeking out, like, that same condition can be treated equally with acupuncture?
Yeah. So I guess in a way, what you may be asking is like, what do we treat? And can you treat concurrently with Western medicine?
What I'm seeking out here is like, I have chronic pain in my scapula, let's say. This is true, listeners. Actually, this is true. Well, I could just go to the Western medicine doctor and say, hey, what can you do here? But for almost everything that we go to a Western med doctor, I feel like there's always a different way. And we explore that a lot on this show. We've yet to explore acupuncture. So instead of maybe getting prescription for pain meds, or I don't even know what they would do for this, I just try to stretch. I could technically come seek acupuncture.
I will say yes to that question. And essentially, you can kind of think about it like this. At least I am, and most acupuncturists are very integrative. So, what I want for the patient is relief, in your case, from pain. And I want that to be the end result, right? So, we tend to take the route of the least drastic intervention. So if surgery is like on one side of the spectrum, and if doing nothing is on the other side, we think there's a lot in between, right? So what I would say, for example, I mean, I've helped many a person avoid a knee surgery. You know what I mean?
Ooh, tell us more. Tell us more, because chronic knee pain is a thing.
It's a total thing. So, and there's a lot of actually studies, like peer-reviewed RCTs published about this. Acupuncture is effective in the treatment of knee pain. But I would urge anyone before going towards a more drastic intervention to seek other options. For example, I work in an office where we have massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, and we help a lot of people with these conditions and avoid them having to go like under the knife. Of course, that's necessary sometimes. And also, like I said, integratively, if you broke your leg, don't come to me. Please go. please go to the Western, please go to the ER. You know what I mean? But there's just certain things for pain. There's a lot more options than just surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. What about disease? What about autoimmune disease?
Okay. So now you're speaking my language. That's a high area of interest of mine. But we treat in Chinese medicine, I don't want to say any concern, because like I said, I'd refer out for some more emergent conditions, but most things can be addressed with Chinese medicine. And this might be a little bit easier to understand if we talk about like the intake process a little bit. So when somebody comes in for an acupuncture treatment, it starts with a total review of systems. So we talk about lifestyle, we talk about review of systems. So for example, we'll go through and we'll check in, we'll ask questions about movement. We'll ask questions about sleep, about hydration, about nutrition. We ask questions about, I actually ask all of my patients to give me their most recent lab work. or any imaging. Like, for example, if they are a pain patient, I ask them for lab work and imaging related to their condition. And we go through probably a 30-minute intake with each patient, kind of getting the background information. Because if you come to me with pain as your chief concern, I'm still going to ask you all the questions about digestion, about immune system, about your skin, about your dental hygiene, right? Oral health. We ask all of these questions because in Chinese medicine, all these little pieces, a little puzzle piece over here, a little puzzle piece over there, over here, they come together and they form this whole picture that is you. So you're not a person that pain is happening in isolation. There's a lot of other systems underneath that can not only be causing or contributing to some of this pain. Sometimes pain may not have a physical form at all. We talk about emotional health, mental health, all of these things are considered when we discuss pain, or for any condition for that matter.
So when you talk about pain emotionally, I guess my main question, who is this for? It sounds like it's not only just for pain or inflammation or that stuck energy that might build up a toxic burden on our body. It can also be to work through some emotional past hardships. Is that truth?
Yes. Okay. So this is actually an area where I feel that traditional Chinese medicine truly shines and may have a slightly more like advanced perspective. So in Chinese medicine, just like we talked about physical stagnation, right? In Chinese medicine, we also talk about emotional stagnation, okay? So each organ, and this is really fascinating. So each organ in our world has a corresponding emotional space, all right? And we talk about the organs and the emotional space, I guess, kind of like the seasons, right? So there's a flow. Sometimes you experience joy, sometimes fear, sometimes anger, sometimes sorrow, but there's a flow, right? But when we get stuck in a particular emotional space, that's what we call emotional stagnation. And it's very interesting because it can happen in one of two ways, right? It's kind of like a chicken or the egg scenario. So, on one side, you can have a physical problem that causes you to linger in emotional space. So, for example, if somebody in Chinese medicine has a kidney deficiency, the kidney system's associated with the emotion of fear. So this would be a person who would see the world through a lens of fear more than, let's say, the average guy. Okay. But the opposite can work as well. And this applies hugely in the COVID era, hugely in just 21st century mental health awareness. You can be in an emotional space due to external circumstance, which over time will affect the functioning of the internal organ. So, for example, let's say a loved one passes away, puts you into a profound space of sorrow, of grieving, sadness, right? Deep, deep, deep sadness. If you don't move through it, right? Let's say you linger in it for a long time, or let's say you put it in a little box and stuff it down, right? Over time, that emotion is going to impact the body. So in this case, sorrow is housed in the lungs, right? So over time, if you don't move through the space of sorrow or grieving, we'll eventually see pathology present in the lungs. So it's interesting because it's chicken or the egg. It's one leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other. But that is exactly evidence of how intertwined, how literally inseparable physical and emotional health are in our world.
That is the most fascinating thing. I feel like we could talk a whole podcast on that
Yes.
alone. But we
Yeah.
won't. We won't, guys. We will not do that. Um, so I'm hearing physical and emotional. And it made me think when you said Chinese medicine has an up on Western medicine in this area. How long is Chinese medicine? How long has acupuncture been around?
5,000 years. And that's another interesting like thing when you think about like the historical longevity of that. So like for example, acupuncture came to the US in the 70s, but to this day, if you go to a hospital in China, you will be like triaged kind of. So you'll walk in, they say what's wrong or whatever, and they'll send you, there's a wing that's for Western medicine, or you could be sent to a wing that's for acupuncture, a wing that's for Chinese herbal medicine, or a wing that's for Chinese medical massage. It's called Tuina. But that in their hospitals exists today, which is fascinating. Because I mean, and there are some hospitals, I don't know if we're in Michigan here when we're talking about this, there's in the several big hospital systems here, we have acupuncturists, but not in the same way. But isn't that interesting? Like you wouldn't know that.
Well, this is just such a silly thing. We talk about Chinese medicine. I don't always picture it. I picture this ancient practice that we do specialize and it's not mainstreamed enough. And we can talk about why eventually, but I don't actually picture it taking place still as a mainstreamed medicine over in China or over in different countries.
And most people probably wouldn't expect to see me talking about this. You know what I mean? But it's like the stories of how people get into Chinese medicine are really interesting.
Now, give us a quick, because your story is fascinating in that space. Why Chinese medicine for you?
To make an incredibly long story short, I have a brother who's a year older than me, and we're like best friends, right? And when we were in high school, he ended up getting Lyme disease. So no one could really figure out what was wrong with him for many years, and his physical and cognitive health declined over that time. So by the end of it, he was fully wheelchair bound, like couldn't walk from here to the door, had to drop out of school. His cognition was impacted. It was really, really terrible. And we went through like all the traditional Western medicine routes, right? We went to all like the big places. We went to U of M, went to Mayo Clinic. Nobody could figure out what was wrong, right?
Now, often, really quick, often we talk about chronic conditions here, and Lyme is one that is known of sometimes you can't bounce back.
Oh yeah. So spoiler alert on this story. It's a good ending, but but that's what it was looking like. So like he finally got diagnosed with Lyme, and then they went through the traditional treatments. He was like on a PICC line with IV antibiotics every day. It was like really, really gnarly, and it wasn't helping him, right? So like anyone, you don't give up, right? So full disclosure, at this time, I thought this traditional Chinese medicine thing was a little cuckoo crazy. But my parents were like, okay, like, let's take him here. They got a referral from a massage therapist. And it took 3 years, but he went from a space where he was basically like a vegetable on the couch to now at a point where he's functioning at probably like 95% normal. He went back to school. He got his life back. Now he's a chiropractor. He has his own clinic in Atlanta. Like, I mean, he got his life back. So I watched all of that happen, and I just could not stop studying like anything I could get my hands on. Like, how is this possible? Because like I said, I thought it was like a little nutshell, right? And finally I was finishing my undergrad, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. So I took my journalism degree and threw it aside for a little bit. And I went to Chinese medicine school. And that was like a transformational moment.
Just a call to action for listeners out there. If you know someone with Lyme, we're constantly talking about wanting to provide hope. And it's not to say one thing will fix everything, but there is hope with these chronic conditions. And you can find it by looking at our bodies as this whole body system. And just hearing that story, it gives me the goosebumps. Like that's why you're here, but your brother's story can impact so many stories.
I try and share it with a lot of patients because it doesn't have to be Lyme particularly. It can be any health issue that you're really having a hard time solving. You're not alone. You're not alone. And there's other methods out there than what you may hear when you go to your primary care. And there's hope. There's absolutely hope. Like for Lyme, for example, we treat Lyme as an external pathogenic invader, we call it. So like a bad guy coming in trying to attack your system. So it's a delicate balance because it's partially about kicking out the bad guy, but it's partially about restoring function because the Lyme pathogen wreaks a lot of havoc in the system. And so it's a delicate balance of, kicking out the bad guy, but restoring the damage that's occurred.
Bringing back balance. Now, exactly. Duration and frequency, I'd imagine looks different for someone with chronic Lyme to someone who might just have, I don't even know what, I mean, everything is significant to someone in some degree. I was going to say knee pain, but that can be very significant. However,
I know what you mean, though.
Point being, what's duration and frequency look like for people seeking acupuncture?
Yeah. So like you hit it on the head, it varies, but I could give you a couple examples. So let's say that you're like a 70-year-old man who's had back pain for 30 years. That's going to take some time, right? Took you a while to get there. It's going to take you a little while to get out. I would say 6 months, maybe.
Okay.
I'd have
Coming
to
in
meet
every week?
in in a dream world, of course, we're at an amazing place where if you fast forward to like a little bit later this year, in a lot of states, acupuncture is covered by insurance, but we're at a really big turning point in the state of Michigan for that. So, yay. So, in a dream world, if you did the most efficient way would be to come in. I have patients come in like closer together in the beginnings, right? So, like, let's say with this 7-year-old with back pain of 30 years. I would say to come in weekly for several months. And then as they start feeling better, you space it out. And then eventually you quote unquote graduate them and just see them for occasional tune-ups. But let's say you have a low back spasm, acute, right? Oh my, that could get cleaned up in one session, maybe 3 tops. You know what I mean? So it depends on the issue. And that's just pain, right? For example, for fertility, we do a lot of work with people going on like fertility journeys or a lot of support with pregnant women or people, trying to get pregnant through IVF, IUI, whatever. In that case, I might see them like a little bit closer to like a transfer date if it's like an IVF, IUI patient. So pain is one thing. Other conditions, it would really, really depend.
Let's talk about the needling. So acupuncture, guys, if you're curious, you want to explore, go. But let's talk about the needling. Does it hurt?
Okay, so it's so funny. I'll just say no. I'll also say this. So people come in and there are a lot. Spoiler alert, no one likes needles. I'm just gonna put that out there. But people come in and they're very, very nervous. And I will tell you, it's almost like a joke at this point because I'll say 99.99999% of patients that come in who are afraid of the needles will take our time and we try the first one and see how it goes. The overwhelming response is, oh, that was it? Every time they say that.
That was my experience too. Not necessarily like seeking out needles. Also wasn't too worried about the pain, but you walk in and you just wonder your first time, is this going to suck? Am I paying for something to just literally stink and hurt my body? And the first time I was there, I think, and I've only gone a couple of times, guys, I want to seek it out so much more. I think I fell asleep. I told my husband I either fell asleep for sure, or I was so relaxed that I didn't know whether I was sleeping or awake. Like, what just happened? What voodoo did you do to my body to make it feel this awesome?
Yes, that's like, so it's very common. A lot of people will kind of be floating in this space. It's like Twilight and, in the middle, not asleep, not awake kind of thing.
It's the Twilight Zone. It totally was.
And then, or other people just fall asleep, and not to pick on a certain population, but there is a certain older male population that you can hear them snoring from down the hallway. So
I hope it wasn't me.
Or younger white female.
Oh man. I don't know what happened. It was really cool. So to the listeners out there, Ben, I endorse it, but it was the first place I went the first time for fertility. Now, I think we're about 6 months in our journey of saying, yeah, we'd love to have a child. And I went, and it was the first time someone said, you track your cycle and it's only 26 days. I think it was 26 or 27. We should try to lengthen that. And it was like, huh? I have control over lengthening my cycle? What? It just launched me into this information seeking. We're always learning new things about how unique our bodies are and how much control we do have over this process. And so have full circled around to when I was pregnant to try to go to acupuncture to get that baby to decide to come into the world at 42 weeks. But neither here nor there. I just want to say that it didn't hurt me. It was awesome. It was an awesome experience. And so do you get people walking out of there just kind of mind blown like myself, or is it a mixed bag of responses?
Yeah, typically people don't really know what to expect when they come in, and they just float right on out of the office and say they had the best night of sleep of their life. But I think another like interesting part of this is to think about the people who do come in. So there's a stereotype or like a thought process about who the patients are that come and get acupuncture. And I'd like to blow that out of the water a little bit. So we do have like maybe like 15% that's like wellness people, who are just people put us in like the hippy dippy box, which I'm cool with. But maybe that's only maybe like 15% of who we see. We see a lot of pain. We see a lot of pregnancy, fertility related folks, a lot of mental, emotional folks. But then the rest of people who come to get oftentimes will come to Chinese medicine is exactly the story that I kind of shared about my family. It's people who have tried, exhausted all their other options, and they're like, okay, I'll go try this thing. So most people don't know what to expect, right? And so the cases we see can be actually quite complex, which kind of makes it fun and interesting if you think of my job as being like a detective, right? But yeah, when people come in, they have no idea. They're just there because they need help, because they ran out of options. And then, I mean, the amazing relaxation is one of the many great side effects of acupuncture. So I love watching that happen. But more than anything, I love seeing people here when we explain the interconnected nature of the systems. I love seeing that light in their eye when they're like, wow, someone understands. Wow, someone's looking at me as a person, not just a liver, not just an intestine. It's all together. It's all working together. And that's kind of the fun part.
I just want to end there. That's a beautiful statement. That's awesome. So give some advice to people out there who are on the fence, maybe at that place of, oh, I'm at my wit's end. I'm tired of living in this chronic condition. Just speak to them.
Yeah. So I just want to say, if you've hit a dead end, if you are a person, you've went to 20 different doctors, you shared your story, people are throwing their hands in the air at you saying, I don't know. Or if you're that person who the doctors will tell there's nothing wrong with you, when you deep down inside know that you are not truly well, these are the people I'm most interested in seeing. Okay. These people who've been swept under the rug. So if this is you, if there's any inkling in you who just has not felt satisfied with the answers that you've been receiving, I would strongly encourage you to come out and just ask questions. Just ask some questions, because when you learn more about this system of medicine, you'll see it's amazing. It's amazing. And we provide a lot of people who, again, hit that dead end with hope and help.
Chinese medicine, 5,000 years, you guys. you heard it here.
Around the block more.
All right, Jesse, will you tell listeners 3 things they can do today for better health?
Yes. Okay. We must budget for 8 hours of sleep each night. If you haven't heard of this, if you need inspiration on this, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, it'll change your life. Second, this is really Chinese medicine-y, so get ready. We need people to be eating breakfast. So I'm talking a cooked breakfast. You're going to look at me like I have 3 heads, ideally with vegetables. Okay. This is going to optimize digestion, nutrient breakdown, and energy distribution for the day. And the third one is, I would strongly encourage everyone. It's free. It's accessible. Look into and start developing or cultivating your own mindfulness practice. 5 to 10 minutes a day is all you need. You don't need to be sitting on a pillow, chanting or whatever. It could be walking, disconnected from headphones. It could be journaling. It could be breathing exercises. It could be sitting under a tree. Just anything that pulls you into the present moment. The research is out there about this, and it's really fascinating.
Oh, awesome. I love that. I want to hug all the trees. So
I know. I'm like,
I want to touch trees and feel their energy. Listeners, don't judge that comment, but I've liked trees since I was a little girl. So that's just where we're at. Jesse, thank you so much for doing this with us. And also, guys, you heard from one acupuncturist today. This is something you can find in your state. Dr. Jesse is in Michigan, but hey, if you're that person who's been to 20 different clinics, you can find this, you can access this, and there's hope for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the FDA. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse nor accept responsibility for statements made by guests.